part of what grocers are doing is putting costs back onto their suppliers so that they don't have to pass the costs on to consumers.
Welcome back for another episode of A Closer Look with Michael Friscolanti. I'm Scott Sexsmith. Derek Turner in the room as well. Okay, follow up to last night. We'll start with the bad news. We have not located the sweater as of yet.
I really want that sweater to turn up.
It's going to happen.
Check your closets, folks. Check your closets.
It's hanging around somewhere.
Yeah, it's got to be. It has to be somewhere. I wonder if after it was sold, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. Maybe it was donated somewhere, and it could have been sent overseas. They send a lot of clothing overseas. That you never know.
Well, the internet, it's a big thing, you know.
I just think it's amazing that they were able to track it as far as they did.
I know.
Like, it was pretty crazy that they were able to do that.
It's a great story.
It is a great story. I really hope there's a happy ending.
Quite often we mention the email where people can reach out and send us a note, good or bad. Got a really lovely note last night from Susan in Pickering. Hi, guys. Really love your show and watch it every night. I was especially happy after tonight's show because, as we said, there is so much gloom and doom these days. I also don't want to get up for fear of what's happened overnight, but this show was so upbeat, it actually changed my whole mood. Now I can go to bed a happier person. Isn't that nice?
Did you write that?
I did not write that.
That's very nice.
Look at us. Closer look. Yeah. Putting people to sleep one episode at a time.
Yeah, that's right. I hope she doesn't go back and look at some of our back episodes that are definitely all about doom and gloom. But yeah, it speaks to the great mix of stories we tell on this podcast, which is great. And I'm glad that Susan in Pickering is listening and people all over the province are listening. Are we getting new subscribers? Are people subscribing?
It's look, I don't want to say it's going crazy, but it's knocking on crazy's door.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I don't like to know the details.
Yeah, I know. You don't want to get mired down and bogged down in all the details.
No.
That's for us folk who are down in the weeds, I guess. Closer look at villagemedia.ca. If you'd like to reach out to us, we'd love to hear from you, just like Susan and Pickering did. And closerlookpodcast.ca is where you can sign up for our nightly email. Okay, the Grocery Code of Conduct is officially here.
Yeah, when I look back on a lot of our episodes, not a lot, but some of our episodes from last year, we did talk about the grocery issue quite a bit, right? We had Gary Sands on from the Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers a couple of times, mostly to talk about the whole controversy over where they're going to return the empty beer bottles, but also about grocery prices. We had a couple very smart professors on talking about various reports that have come out about food prices and food inflation. We talked about cloned meat, which was one of my favorites as well. But underneath all that, we mentioned a few times that this grocery code of conduct was coming, that it was coming down the pipe, that it's a pretty complex arrangement between the major grocers in Canada and their suppliers, and what it's going to mean for the grocery industry, and hopefully what it'll mean for the price of groceries going forward for you and I and for everyone else who is looking at their grocery bill these days and wondering what the heck's going on. We're going to get some detail tonight on what the actual code of conduct is, how it works, and what it'll actually mean to us. We're going to speak to Mike von Massow. Did I pronounce that right?
You did. See, I'm usually the guy that screws up poor Mike's name, so it's nice to see that.
Mike's fantastic. He's a professor at the University of Guelph. He's a very well-known expert on these issues and has been on our show a couple of times. We're looking forward to chatting with him again.
On January 1st, the Grocery Code of Conduct became fully operational with Canada's 5 largest grocers, Empire, Loblaw, Metro, Walmart, and Costco, having now formally registered voluntarily to participate. So what exactly is this code? What are the goals? And how, if at all, will consumers benefit from it? Here to answer those questions and many more is no stranger to the show, Mike von Massow, a food economist at the University of Guelph. Mike, welcome back to the program. Always good to see you.
Well, thanks for having me, gentlemen. Looking forward to it.
All right, Mike, when people hear Grocery Code of Conduct, it sounds somewhat bureaucratic. In plain English, what problem is this trying to fix, and why did it become necessary now?
Well, I think the problem it's trying to fix is preventing from the large retailers from unduly leveraging their power over their suppliers. So we all know that there are things like listing fees and there are other charges. During COVID, we heard a couple of the grocers were charging their suppliers to help them pay for setting up their online shopping thing. Suppliers complain about terms not being met, so that they're dragging their feet on paying, and so in order to address that, we've come up with this code of conduct which sets guardrails around what grocers or retailers can ask their suppliers for, what they can leverage and what they can't. So it's sort of to level the playing field between retailers and their suppliers. If you are a retailer and have 20% of the market, you can say, look, if you want access to that market, you not only have to lower your price, you have to pay some listing fees, you have to pay some other fees, and we're not going to pay you for 180 days. We're trying to control that sort of behavior.
Is there a story that sticks out about that, like the worst example of what a grocer did to a supplier back before the code of conduct?
Well, I mean, a lot of it we didn't hear about. We just heard these complaints. And I think that the suppliers would argue all of them. The one that I remember was during COVID, when a couple of these large grocers said, we're going to charge our suppliers to help us build this online infrastructure. Some grocers were ahead of others at the time, and they were going to try and have their suppliers pay for that so that they didn't have to increase prices. Part of what grocers are doing is putting costs back onto their suppliers so that they don't have to pass the costs on to consumers. And some would argue that in this circumstance, the behavior of retailers was maybe not fair to the suppliers, but it was saving us as consumers from paying more. Another example, I think that comes to my mind is not one from Canada, but one from Great Britain before they introduced their code of conduct. And the grocery stores there often have branded milk. So Tesco or whoever would have milk with their name on it. And so they would put pressure on their suppliers to reduce the cost of that milk, because milk is a loss leader in many grocery stores. And so those retailers were putting pressure back on the farmers who were selling milk to them and making it unprofitable. And the retailers have market power, and the processors have market power over individual farmers. And so farmers were complaining that they were bearing the cost of using milk as a loss leader. And because there were individual relationships with processors and farmers, that was causing some problem. Now in Canada, that's less of an issue, because with supply management, we have central desk selling, so that all the milk gets sold through the milk marketing board. And so the processors don't have the same power over individual farmers.
Okay, Mike, I want to get into the nuts and bolts of the code for a sec. If a supplier feels that a grocer has crossed the line, what actually happens next? Can you kind of walk us through that process?
Well, yeah. So the actual code came into effect last summer, and what's happened January 1st is the formal dispute settlement mechanism is now in place. And so if a supplier thinks they're being treated unfairly or outside of the bounds of the grocery code of conduct, so one of the things retailers have to justify specific charges, and if they can't, or if they don't find that acceptable, the supplier can complain to the organization that is running the code of conduct, and they have a president and infrastructure, and they're going to report annually. And the hope is that through some discussion, we'll most frequently address those concerns, and we'll come up with an agreement outside of the formal dispute settlement mechanism. Otherwise, there is a formal dispute settlement mechanism which then proceeds, and there are there's less flexibility for what happens afterwards. The organization can say, here's our finding, and that's what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And there'll be an annual report that says, here are the findings we had, here are the issues we had. So there'll be some naming and shaming going on as well.
That makes sense. Speaking of naming and shaming, this is all happening at the same time as that whole bread price fixing scandal is kind of winding its way still through the courts. There was a settlement proceedings, people could sign up. How much did that kind of behavior contribute to this grocery code of conduct, if at all?
Well, I'm not convinced that it contributed a whole lot to that. You know, we focused on the retailers, but in fact, a grocery code of conduct may make this bread price fixing scandal or a similar thing less likely to happen. Mm-hmm. We need to remember that the people who did the price fixing were the sellers of bread, mm-hmm. and one of those was a division of Loblaw's, Weston Bread, and then there was Canada Bread as well. And they got together to say, here's the prices we're going to do. Mm-hmm. Now, there's some contention as to whether the head office at Loblaw's mm-hmm. knew that was going on or not. All of the other retailers said they were not involved. Mm-hmm. And you can see that if they're putting pressure on individual bread manufacturers to say, oh, we'll get it cheaper from someone else, that the bread manufacturers have some incentive to say, okay, we're not going to go below this price. You not go below this price, and we'll ensure our margins. So it may make the bread price fixing type of activity less likely, just because the suppliers will feel less pressure from the retailers, but it is not going to preclude that, because that activity was explicitly on behalf of the suppliers, mm-hmm. I would argue.
Mm-hmm. Here's a $64,000 question. People in Canada and Ontario specifically are seeing headlines about a grocery code of conduct and are wondering, does this mean I'm going to pay less at the grocery store going forward? Is that going to happen, Mike?
Well, the short answer is no, and I'm happy to give you the long answer.
Please do.
Or the longish answer. There were some people who were saying, oh, we'll have a grocery code of conduct and it's going to lower prices. So it's not unreasonable that consumers might think that. But if you think logically through this process, what we're doing is we're lowering the ability of retailers to extract concessions from their suppliers. And so the retailers are going to get less margin or less additional revenue or higher cost because they're paying more quickly for their products. And so they're losing money on one side. It's hard to believe that a company that's losing money on one side mm-hmm. is now going to lower prices on the other side. It just doesn't make intuitive sense. So while it's not a bad thing to do the grocery code of conduct, it makes no sense to expect that it's going to lower grocery prices. The big grocers did say we're concerned about this raising grocery prices. Loblaws came out and said it. Walmart said the same thing. They've now said that what we've negotiated, I think, will be revenue or will be cost neutral. And so we're optimistic that it's not going to get worse because of the code of conduct, but it's not going to get better because of it.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you're a food economist. You study this. You know this better than anyone. What are one or two things that need to happen for us to actually see a difference in our grocery bill, say, by the end of this year?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. It's important to look at, we hear one number, for the month of November, it was a little over 4% for food prices, but that's kind of an average. And underneath there are prices that are going up less. In fact, some that went down. We just came out of the Christmas break, and we know that turkey as a protein wasn't any more expensive this year than it was a year ago. And in fact, it hasn't gone up in 2 years. And so that's a very positive thing. But what has gone up a lot is beef prices. Mm-hmm. And that's dragged some of the other proteins with it. And beef prices are a bit of a hangover of dry seasons in the west of Canada and in the Midwest of the US, where there wasn't enough feed for these cattle producers. So there was less pasture in the summer, there was less hay in the winter, so they reduced their herds. And so now we have a basic economics 101 supply issue where cows are the factory of the beef business. And if you don't have enough cows, you can't produce enough calves, which turn into beef. So that's going to take some time. If you look at things like coffee, that's happening because of extreme weather. Coffee is kind of the canary in the coal mine for climate change, and even small differences in temperature affect yields and disease resilience and that sort of. So again, we've got yields going down for coffee. Demand isn't changing. Economics 101, prices will go up.
Yes.
And so if you could tell me what's going to happen this year with respect to weather, I would give you a much more definitive prognostication about what food prices are going to do. I don't think beef prices have a whole lot of room to go up a long way. It's going to take a couple of years for the herd to be rebuilt. Wow. But I think they're going to start to, we haven't reduced consumption that much, and I think some imports will hold down prices, but we like beef, and so I'm not sure it's going to change in the short run. I think coffee shouldn't get more expensive. We did see some impact due to the Trump administration's tariffs that should be mitigated as we go forward. And so if we have a decent weather year globally, we should see some prices come down. And we always see prices come down a little bit in the spring when we start to get to Canadian produce. I think the new reality is that prices are going to go up and down more than they have ever before because of less predictable weather, more extreme weather events, and more frequently.
Mike, you are correct. We do love beef. That is a fact. Several weeks ago, we did an episode on meat cloning. What's your take on that?
Well, we're doing some research on that right now, and it's not necessarily cloning that we're doing. We're actually able to grow animal cells in a bioreactor, and so we are essentially growing biologically identical meat in these bioreactors, and we can do it in Singapore, for example. You can get cultured chicken nuggets for about $25. Now, I'm not sure why you'd want to pay $25 for chicken nuggets, but it's coming. One of the challenges they're having is to create something with some structure so that you get that mouth feel of a steak, right? And we're able to do sort of ground product or minced product, and they're working on this. So I think it'll come. I think it'll take some pressure off protein prices and protein production. I still think I'll eat it, but I still think I'll really still enjoy that steak on the barbecue from an actual Canadian animal. So
it is fascinating research, though, because I do wonder, like in 20 years, are we going to look back and say this kind of research was critical to helping feed more people at a more reasonable price? Is that fair to say?
Well, I think it is fair to say, and if you look at North Americans, our actual per capita consumption of protein is going down. We've probably overconsumed protein. I hate to tell you, and I still like eating a lot of meat, but we've probably overconsumed. We're getting older, so our portion size is going down. But as incomes go up around the world, we're seeing an increase in demand for protein, and we have a limited land base. And our capacity to produce, pork and beef and chicken will be constrained eventually. So what this is going to do is ensure long-term food security, and it'll become just another option in our portfolio of proteins that we can eat. I don't think it's apocalypse cow by any stretch, but I think we'll have another option. It's the same with some of these plant-based options that haven't come as far as we thought they might. But I think version 2.0 and 3.0 will be different and again provide us with another option.
That's interesting. I can confirm that I have overconsumed everything. I'm on the list of overconsuming everything. That's why it looks so good. Is there anything on the food front that we should be asking you about as well, Mike? I mean, you're teaching every day. You're teaching right now. You're in between classes. What's on the horizon? What do we need to be thinking about in the years to come?
Well, yeah, I think this cultured meat is going to be really, really interested, cultured protein. And, they're working on things like chocolate. So cocoa will be able to culture. So I think alternate sources of products are coming and will be interesting. I think we're going to see the ability to produce products that are tailored to specific needs. So I was talking to a First Nation up in northern Manitoba who have a small vertical farm on their First Nation as a trial for increasing food security in northern communities. And they had trouble getting their elders and some of their population on side because they weren't traditional food products and it wasn't quote unquote natural. But then they started adding specific nutrients to the fertilizer, the water that they were producing these plants with, and dealing with specific nutritional deficiencies on that First Nation, and improving the health of those populations. And so I think we're getting better and better, whether it's through cultured products or natural or our historical products. We're getting better at making them very specific to what we need, and we'll be able to I think food is we've all heard food is medicine. I think to a more and more significant degree, we'll be able to eat things that are really designed, if you will, to optimize our health.
Amazing.
Good stuff. Mike, we always learn a ton when you come on the show. And thanks to you, I now have two new favorite expressions, mouthfeel and apocalypse cow. Yeah. So thank you for that. There's Mike von Massow, food economist at the University of Guelph. Mike, always great to see you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Always love having Mike on the show. And it's true. You get a guest like that, you always walk away smarter than when you came in.
Yeah, he's a great professor. I imagine his students are learning quite a bit.
Yeah, it was good. Apocalypse Cow.
Yeah, that's great. I love...
Derek, new movie.
Apocalypse Cow. That's the one. It's amazing. I think how many we should keep track this year. How many episodes come back to cloned meat? Because it's just everything seems to come back to cloned meat.
Where's the beef? It's in a petri dish.
It's the future. It's the future. And even he said it. That's both professors, Professor Loblaw and Professor von Massow. They would eat cloned meat. So obviously, there's no safety concerns with cloned meat. It's just the optics of it.
No, I am concerned about $25 nuggets.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is insane.
It's crazy. You know what, though? When you think about technological advances and scientific advancements, they come in 20 years. Like, you think it sounds crazy now, but in 30 years, you'll look back and it's totally normal. And you're like, yeah, that makes complete sense that we would do that.
Yeah.
And look, grocery bills are, like he said, with the way climate change is now, no one's going to be able to predict the weather going forward. No. All kinds of disruptions to the food cycle. And it brings a little bit of certainty to the process, right? So if that's what they're going to be doing to help, that's what they're going to be doing.
Completely off topic, you mentioned advancements in technology. Over the Christmas break, I was sitting in the Eaton Centre in Toronto. Mm-hmm. Girls were shopping, not my thing, sat down, started people watching. I see a guy walking his robotic dog.
No, you didn't.
I did.
Did you ask him about it?
He walked into the Apple store. I kid you not, the dog laid down just like a dog would. And when the guy came out of the store, dog got up. He had it on a leash.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Apparently, they're like $15,000.
But why would you want one? What do they do?
I don't know.
Count your steps? Get a watch for that.
Anyway, related to absolutely nothing that we talked about on the show when you mentioned technology.
It's a cloned dog. Good stuff. We'll try to get him on the show this week.
We will do that. Closer look at villagemedia.ca. Any thoughts, comments, questions? We'd love to hear from you. And, of course, sign up at closerlookpodcast.ca. Tonight's program produced, as always, by Derek Turner. For Michael Friscolanti, our editor-in-chief here at Village Media, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow night at 7, right here on Closer Look.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.